Alright, so today we are going to be doing the base folio for this Always Easy folio that I shared on Saturday. So to make this, we're going to need some chipboard and some 65-pound cardstock. So let's gather those and then let's get started. Hey and howdy everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be making the base folio for the Always folio that I shared on Saturday. So to get started, we're going to need one piece of chipboard that's cut to 8.5 by 8.5, two pieces of chipboard that are cut to 8.5 by 1 inch, and those will be the spines on either side, and then two pieces of chipboard that's cut to 8.5 by 4 1/4, and those will be the folio front cover. And then to make the closure on the cover, you're going to need a piece of chipboard that is cut to 6 by 2.5 inches. So to get started, I'm going to take 3 pieces of black 65-pound cardstock and I am going to glue them all together. I'm just laying them out here so that I can make sure that the layout will work and that all of my pieces will fit before I go ahead and glue them together. So this is what it's going to look like. So let's go ahead and get those 3 pieces attached. Alright, so now that we have those 3 pieces glued together, that's going to cover our chipboard. So we're going to go ahead and lay our chipboard pieces down and then get ready to wrap it. Alright, so now that we have all of our chipboard pieces down, you can see the book or the folio starting to come together. So our next step is going to be to miter the corners so that we can fold our pieces over. So I'm just using a small cutting mat and a craft knife, and this is just a tool that I picked up on Amazon. So I'm going to go ahead and just chop off a little bit of the excess cardstock that is on the sides, just because we don't need all of that to cover the folio. Okay, so let's go ahead and miter all 4 of our corners. You can just use scissors, you can use the method that I'm using, it's entirely up to you. So once you have it mitered on all 4 corners, we are going to take a little bit of our double-sided adhesive and just run it along the edges of our chipboard so that when we go to fold this over, we're going to use some liquid glue as well, but I like to have like a sticking point that will stick like right away, just to help hold it in place while the liquid adhesive sticks. So let's go ahead and do that. so let's go ahead and add some liquid adhesive right along the edge of the chipboard, and then cover your black cardstock with it along the edge. And then we're going to go ahead and flip it up. And then we're going to do that for the opposite long edge as well. Alright, so now to do the other side, we are going to pull off our double-sided adhesive backing, and then I'm just going to use a bone folder to kind of push in the corner edges and fold them down so that when we fold this other piece over, we have a nice, straight, even corner. So let's go ahead and do that on both sides. And again, we're just going to put some liquid adhesive right along the edge of the chipboard and then fill in the piece and push it down. So our base is starting to look pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a couple pieces of cardstock to cover my inside base. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're going to cut those to 8 1/4 and leave them at 11 inches long. And so they'll just overlap each other a little bit in the center, which I'm okay with. You can cut a little bit more of the excess off, but it's entirely up to you. So now that we have our folio base completed, it's time to start building out the pages on the inside. So to start with, I'm going to take a piece of black cardstock cut to 8 1/2 by 9, and I'm going to score along the edge at the 8 1/2 mark. And I'm just going to fold that over, and that's going to become our first flap, the large one on the base inside back cover. Our next step is going to be to create the 2 smaller flaps that open to the left and right on the front cover flaps. So we're going to cut 2 pieces of black cardstock to 4 5/8 by 8 1/2, and then we're going to score at the 4 1/8 mark on both of those. And let's go ahead and attach our 3 flaps to our base folio. So I'm just going to use some liquid adhesive on all 3 of those flaps. next step will be to make the inside pocket underneath our large flap on the base inside back. So we're going to cut a piece of cardstock to 9.5 by 5, and we're going to score at 1/2, 9, and then flip it around so you're scoring along the long edge, and you're going to score that at 4.5. And then we're going to take a pair of scissors and we're just going to cut off the corners so that when we go ahead and fold it down, we're going to get a nice clean folded pocket. And to make this pocket a little bit more creative, shall we say, I'm going to go ahead and use one of my edge punches. And to do this, I'm going to find my center because I don't want to punch all the way over. I find sometimes with some of the edge punches that depending on how delicate the punch could be, that if you punch all the way to the edges, that sometimes you end up, after using the folio or album for a little while, that they become broken or torn. I find if I do full sets that only leave a little bit on the edge, then they stay a lot cleaner. So I'm going to go ahead and just punch it, and as you can see, there is a little bit of cardstock that's going to be left on the edge to help kind of protect it a little bit more. So other things I sometimes do will be to, punch it on the pocket a couple of times and glue them together. Sometimes I'll just punch it on the pocket and then I will do a small strip that I will glue over it, just so that you can give it a little bit more durability. And then sometimes I'll take like glossy accents or something similar, and I will cover the punched areas with that, which gives it a lot of holding power as well. So there we go. Now I'm just going to fold my edges down and I'll go ahead and glue it to my folio. My next step is going to be ensuring that my large flap will actually stay closed in the folio. So I'm going to use 4 magnets. I'm going to use 2 on the bottom pocket, on the top of the bottom pocket, and then I will match those to the bottom inside of the large flap. So I'm just going to go ahead and put those 2 down on the pocket, and then I will use those as guides in order to attach the top ones. So I'm just going to grab some double-sided adhesive and cut a piece off. I'm going to flip it upside down, and then I am going to just let the magnet fall on it. And I'm going to do that on both sides, and then I'll just push down the top flap over top of it so it'll stick to it in exactly the right spot. Okay, so on the left and right side, I'm going to create 2 waterfall features. And to do this, I have cut 8 pieces of 4x6 cardstock, and I'm going to score each one of those at 5.5. And then I'm going to cut 2 pieces of black cardstock to 4 by 5.5, and those will be my bottom pieces because they won't need the extra flap in order to open. Now that we have all of our pieces, we're going to go ahead and glue them down. Now, ordinarily, I would put some kind of pattern paper under this before I went ahead and attached these, but because it's such a small area and I'm going to be taking up the vast majority of it with my waterfall feature, I'm just going to cover the top and bottom pieces that won't be covered by the waterfall feature with scrap pieces of pattern paper when I'm done. So let's go ahead and attach all of these down. I put the first one on, I'm eyeballing this, so I'm going to put the second one down, and then I'm going to flip the first one down just to make sure everything is aligned properly. And then I'm going to push it down, and I'm going to repeat it for my other two. Alright, so before I go ahead and glue down my piece of cardstock that's cut to 4 by 5.5, I'm going to attach a closure piece to this that I will add a magnet to in a little bit. So I'm going to use a piece of cardstock that is cut to 6 by 1.5 inches. I'm going to score it at 2 inches and fold it over, and then I'm going to find the center of both it and my larger piece of 4 by 5.5 cardstock, and I'm going to glue the 2-inch piece of the 6 by 1.5 cardstock to my 4 by 5.5, and I'm just going to line up the center marks as best I can so that I can make sure that it's relatively straight on the cardstock. So let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so now that we have it glued in place, I'm going to grab a couple more magnets and I am going to use those as a closure. So let's grab some more double-sided adhesive, and we will glue the first one down on our little 1.5 inch wide piece, and then we're going to use the same method as before. We're going to take a piece of double-sided adhesive, flip it upside down, allow the magnet to attach to it, and then we're going to flip it up over top of the waterfall feature so that it sticks in place in exactly the right spot. And we're going to go ahead and repeat the exact same process on the right hand side. So for our two side flaps, the one on the left and right front covers, we are just going to create some cute little pockets. And so I'm using this We Are Memory Keepers pocket punch. You don't really need to use this. There are lots of videos on how to make pockets without it. I just happen to have it and it's fairly convenient to use. So I'm going to go ahead and cut 8 pieces of 6" by 3.5" and I'm going to set my tabs to C and 2, and then I'm just going to cut on one side because I'm not making a pocket with a closure flap. I'm only making the initial pocket. I'm only going to cut on one side, and then I will score on 2 sides and along the bottom. And I'm going to go ahead and do this for all of my pieces so that I can put them all together at the same time and kind of make them assembly style. It will save you time. So once you're done making them all and you get all your edges nice and cleanly folded and burnished, I'm going to punch out the little notch for them before I go ahead and glue them together, just because I don't like getting glue on my punches. So I'm just going to line it up at the C2 mark and punch. Our next step will be to make the tags that will go in each one of the pockets, and to do this I cut 8 pieces of cardstock to 3.5 by 2.5, and I'm just using a We Are Memory Keepers punch to do this. So you could use other punches if you have other tag punches. You could use dies. If you have dies, you could just make your own tags by, cutting a couple pieces of cardstock to the right size and then cutting a couple angles off the top corners. It's entirely up to you. I just find this method quick and easy, and I already have the punches. So it's a nice way to do it, but if you don't have the punch or you don't have a die or something else that you can use, you can certainly do this by hand without having any of those tools. So let's just go ahead and get all of our pockets created and put together and our tags ready. So before we can put our pockets on, we're going to want to put some pattern paper on. So this is the end of the tutorial for creating the base. Next up will be decorating the folio and putting the finishing touches on it. So stay tuned for that. As always, if you're interested in seeing more, don't forget to click on that subscribe button so you can be notified when I have a new video available. Thanks everyone!